NBA Now by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff. Before we get into today's show, what NBA player you think gets traded before the season? Starts in 2 months. Mid-October is when we get the season underway. There's a lot of names that could be dealt. No Lauri Markkanen, but we do have Brandon Ingram out there. And on today's show, we will be talking about the 5 players most likely to be traded after the Lauri Markkanen extension. So get those names down in the comment section right now. But I think there are still a lot of players that could be dealt because a lot of teams need to get upgrades. A lot of teams look to shed some players. And let's start with this. And I do want to mention the Lauri Markkanen stuff because he did get that massive 5-year extension earlier this week, $238 million according to Adrian Wojnarowski. But this does impact the trade market significantly because when you sign a new contract like this, team has to wait 6 months to trade you because of the CBA rules. And if they waited 6 months, well, it's actually past the NBA trade deadline in early February. So Lauri Markkanen will not be traded before this deadline. Can't be. So the only time he can be traded is in the offseason. So what 5 players that are most likely to be traded before the deadline or before the season? Well, number 1 to me still remains to be Brandon Ingram. And if we're just going to be honest here, I don't really understand what the holdup is here. Like, I don't think a resolution is coming in this Brandon Ingram saga. Like, he has 1 year left on his deal. There's reports out there that he wants close to $45, $50 million per season, which I don't know what your opinion is on Brandon Ingram, but I don't think he's worth that much money because if you're getting paid $45 to $50 million a year, to me, you have to be a top 2 player on a championship contending team. And I don't think Ingram is that. I think he's a good third option. So getting paid $35 to $40 million is probably where Brandon Ingram really should kind of land, in my opinion. Ingram's a fine player. Averaged 21 points a game last year, 5.1 rebounds, 5.7 assists. Shot decent from the field, but isn't that good of a three-point shooter. Now, he did have a little bit of a down year. He's had better seasons in the past, but to me, like, I just don't know what the resolution here is with New Orleans and Brandon Ingram. And with that current roster, if there's ever a way to say that a team has too many good players, it's the New Orleans Pelicans. Like, think about their roster. DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones. Like, they have so many good players that it's almost going to hinder them because there is something to hierarchy in the NBA where you have your 2 lead guys or 3 lead guys. Then you have your role players. But what happens when you have like 5 or 6 high-level players? Like, there's just the dynamic and the way they share the court might not be the most efficient. And it might be one of those things where, like, if they traded Brandon Ingram for draft picks, they might ultimately become a better team because they can slot Trey Murphy or Herb Jones in that starting lineup to replace Brandon Ingram, and he fits CJ McCollum, DeJounte Murray, and Zion Williamson much better. And then you have a freed up clear 6th man by whoever Trey Murphy or Herb Jones doesn't start. Like, to me, it's almost like they have too much talent, and getting rid of Brandon Ingram may actually do them very, very good. So let me know, do you think Brandon Ingram will be traded? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Let me know if you think BI will be dealt before the season or if you think he'll be dealt before the trade deadline. I give it a pretty decent chance. Number 2 on our trade candidates list, Zach LaVine, the guard from the Chicago Bulls. And, I mean, this is a very clear one, right? Like, it's honestly almost like the Chicago Bulls are begging teams at this point to try to take on Zach LaVine's contract. And it's unfortunate because 2 or 3 years ago, when the Bulls were the number 1 seed, Lonzo Ball was healthy, DeMar DeRozan was there too. Like, they had a pretty gnarly big 3 in Lonzo, LaVine, DeRozan, and they were very, very good. Caruso was there as well. It's a reason why they had so much hope, but it's really been downhill after that, and it's really been injuries have been name of the game for Zach LaVine. When he's healthy, he's one of the most dynamic 3-level scorers in the NBA. He can do it at the rim. He can do it in the mid-range, isolation, catch and shoot, step back threes. Like, he can do it all and is one of the better 3-point shooters in the NBA. But he constantly is dealing with nagging injuries. And the big contract is another reason why teams don't want him. He's under contract for the next 3 seasons, and it's likely going to be 4 with his player option 4 years from now. And he's getting paid 43, 45, 48 mil in guaranteed money over the next 3 years. Like, if you take a swing on that contract and he ends up continuing to be hurt or not contribute to winning basketball, that is a really bad contract to trade for. And I just don't see a lot of teams lining up to trade for Zach LaVine. Now, there are teams that could use his services for sure, but when you factor in the contract and potentially having to deal with the trade, teams are just not willing to do it. But I do think a trade before the deadline is still likely. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we will have you covered with every single piece of NBA news and rumors. Join myself as we are going to have you covered leading up to the NBA season, but as well as during the season and during the trade deadline. Everything you need, we have you covered here at Chat Sports. Jerami Grant comes in number 3 on this list because I don't really know what Portland's up to, if we're going to be honest. I don't really think Jerami Grant's that good of a player, if we're going to be honest. I like him, but he's never really contributed to winning basketball. Like, every time he's on a team, sure, you're going to look at this and be like, holy crap, Jerami Grant. Like, this is so impressive. Like, 20 points per game, like 4 rebounds, shooting 40% from 3. Like, who wouldn't want this guy? Like, he's a perfect 4 in today's NBA. No, but, like, think about this, guys. He's only played on bad teams like Detroit, Portland. He was with the Nuggets back in the day, but they didn't really do anything when he was on that team. Jerami Grant left, and then that's when the Nuggets really took off. Like, I'm not sure Grant is a winning basketball player. It's one of those guys that you see on paper, and you're like, yeah, I'm in on Jerami Grant, but ultimately, it's really not that good of a move. And it really feels like the Los Angeles Lakers are the only team interested at this point. Like, they're the only team that I see consistently linked to Jerami Grant. Got a pretty big contract as well, which kind of scares me away personally. But Grant would make a lot of sense. You slide him in at the 4 in between Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I'd be fascinated to see the fit. But I'm not in on Jerami Grant personally, but I do think he's probably like a top 3 guy, most likely to get dealt before this upcoming trade deadline. D'Angelo Russell, speaking of the Los Angeles Lakers, is someone also trying to be dealt. He comes in at number 4 on the list. And if we're going to be completely honest here, folks, like D'Lo, on a raw number perspective, was not that bad last year. Like, sure, he came up short in some of the biggest moments, doesn't play a lot of defense, but he averaged 18 points a game and 6 assists last year. And there was a stretch after the All-Star break and in February where he was just going nuclear. Like, he shot 41.5% from 3 last year and shot 45% from the field, but man, oh man, was he really, really good at some point in the season, struggled during the postseason. But it's pretty clear that the Lakers want to get off D'Angelo Russell and his contract after he opted into his $18 million player option before free agency. Lakers are kind of desperate. Ideally, if you're Los Angeles, you're probably trying to trade D'Angelo Russell and some other players to get Jerami Grant, and that's been the rumored package. But Portland has no interest in D'Lo, and why would they, considering they already have a plethora of guards in Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson. Like, they don't really need any more guards, folks. So Lakers, they're struggling to find a partner for D'Angelo Russell. One more trade target and candidate to potentially mention here on the show, but I want to make sure you're hooked up to get some NBA gear here. No matter what team you're a fan of, whether it be the Golden State Warriors, Heat, Lakers, Spurs, Nuggets, it does not matter. You can get all different types of hats for your favorite team. You can get a trucker hat. You can get a rope hat. You can get a fitted hat. You can get dad hat, snapback. Does not matter. Any type of hat you want for your favorite team and different types of designs can be found at chatsports.com/NBA hats. Even some of these hats are on sale for a discounted price, so don't waste your time and get one today. Chatsports.com/NBA hats is the link. We'll have that in the description and comments of today's video for you. Go get your hats today and make sure you're representing your favorite team before the NBA regular season gets underway in mid to late October. I wear hats all the time, so I'm a pretty big fan of the deal that's going on right now at chatsports.com/NBA hats. Final name we're going to talk about today, Cam Johnson, the forward from the Brooklyn Nets. And Johnson's an intriguing name because after Mikal Bridges was dealt away, the one thing that I was wondering was, are they going to have a complete fire sale? Are they going to be trading Dorian Finney-Smith? Is Cam Johnson going to be on the move? Are they just going to complete the tank, go for Cooper Flagg, and accumulate the most draft picks as possible. Well, there really hasn't been a lot of chatter on Cam Johnson, but it would make sense if Brooklyn ended up trading him. Like I mentioned, what are they up to here? And if Cam Johnson isn't traded before the season gets underway in 2 months, I'd be willing to bet a hefty chunk of change that he is moved before the NBA trade deadline. Like, when you think of what they have to do to build their roster from where it is now, you have to hit on draft picks because you're not going to be able to sign any high market free agents. You're not going to be able to trade for anyone, at least right now, because no one's going to want to sign long term there. So the best course of action, if you're asking me, is trade the players that might not be valuable to you in 3 or 4 years, but are valuable now for even more draft capital. And then just you got to hit through the draft, man. You're going to have a good chance to get a building block player this year, assuming Brooklyn finishes in the top 3 or 4 this draft. If we look ahead, man, Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Harper, Nolan Traore. They also got that big man going to Duke who actually played on South Sudan. They're an Olympic team. I'm spacing on the name, but like there's going to be a lot of good players that you can get building blocks around. They also have Nick Claxton. Like to me, they just got to trade off Cam Johnson, probably Dorian Finney-Smith too, get 2 or 3 more first-round picks from those 2 guys combined, and then really just target the draft as the way they rebuild their roster. All right, that will do it for today's show. If you want more surrounding the NBA, my Twitter is the best place to find it. @ Nic_Rohloff is the handle. And if you follow me on today's show and DM me, what's up? Doesn't matter. Just DM me. Say what's up. I'll give you a follow back. It's greatly appreciated, and you will get the content you need surrounding the NBA.